Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavors of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your technical questions answered, and contribute to the community forum. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our construction, tech, or weekly Global Passive House Showcase webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Mathew Cutler-Welsh, taka ingoa, no Tamaki Makaurau aho. I'm Mathew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, New Zealand.
Beautiful. Thank you, Matthew. I'm Zach Semke. I'm coming to you from Seattle, Washington.
I missed one of my Te Reo Maori courses while I was away in Chicago, so I'm trying to make up for it. So
well done. Well done.
Thank you. Yes. Well, it is quite I've struggled as a UK-born Australian growing up in Australia and then moving to New Zealand. I kind of feel that I've missed out not learning a language. So and trying to rectify that later in life is a bit challenging, but very worthwhile.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome.
How's everything going in Seattle?
Seattle's good. It's cold. We just had a pretty important election in the United States. You might have heard about it.
I did hear about it. Yeah.
And
it's not finished yet. And even by the time this goes live, it won't be finished.
No, it's not. It won't totally be settled. But I felt there were some really key decisions that voters made around kind of democracy that went in a heartening direction. Mm-hmm. So we don't need to dwell on the details of politics here, but I think a lot of us were pretty darn concerned about the erosion of democracy continuing during this election, and in many ways, I feel like we dodged a bullet. So
there was one specific point of interest that Michael Ingui pointed out about New York.
Yeah, that's right. Well, two. Actually, there are two. One is the NYSERDA is a key player in enacting the policies that allow the state of New York to deliver on climate goals. And so of course the governor is an important player in that, and the Democratic governor who is supportive of climate action has been reelected. So that's good news for climate policy and the work of NYSERDA. And then there's also something called Proposal 1, which is a measure that will a bond measure, I believe, that raises over $4 billion for climate mitigation and resilience investments, including investments in clean building and green building in New York. So a couple of really important climate-related wins in New York State. Yeah,
very cool. I was paying a little bit of attention to that. There's a few of us watching. Pretty big stuff. Elsewhere in the world, I caught a story this week, not quite as big as US elections, but interesting nonetheless. I keep hearing stories about carbon and in some form or other, whether it's zero carbon, addressing embodied carbon, something relating to carbon. Of course, this week, as we are recording, it is COP27. Yeah. So there are lots of discussions happening there. And I've heard some reports about this being really key time for not just talking about things, but implementing things. And one of the things I hear about often with these articles that pop up in my feed about carbon is Passive House comes up as a solution. And I'll post a link to this. There's an article here from the Fifth Estate, which is quite a good, it has some quite interesting articles out of Australia. And the title of this article is "This is what post-carbon design looks like." And there's a series of examples, mostly from the UK, interestingly, and Passive House is certainly cited as one of the options for lowering both certainly lowering our operational carbon of buildings, but by doing that well, and then looking at where you're getting materials from and what you're constructing that building out of, you can also start to have an impact on embodied carbon and looking at the whole life cycle of buildings. So really interesting to see. I think we've mentioned that before, but Passive House is certainly has a really important part to play in all those efforts to reduce carbon and the CO2 equivalents or the climate impact of our buildings.
It does indeed.
All right. So I'll post a link to that. We've got a great interview to get into this week, but before we do, let's thank our sponsors.
Absolutely. So thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingwe Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minutair All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification Units, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Thanks also to our champion sponsors, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, Proseco, and Source 2050. And a big thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, I had the chance to catch up with a builder down in one of my favourite parts of the country, just out of Wanaka or Hawea Flat, down beautiful part of the South Island of New Zealand. Wanaka, we get into a little bit at the first part of the interview, but it's sort of like a less touristy version of Queenstown. Really stunning lake, beautiful mountains, and just an incredible part of the world. Anyone who goes down, or anyone who's watched any Lord of the Rings stuff, would be familiar with some of the landscape down there. There's a lot of that featured in some of the Lord of the Rings movies. It was filmed down in that part of the world. So that's kind of the stunning landscapes that we're talking about. And it can get quite cold as well down in that part of the world. There's plenty of ski fields, but it also can get relatively warm in the summertime as well. Now, Clint comes from a long line of builders and craftsmen, 7 generations, in fact, all with a connection to that stunning part of the world. And Clint, as he describes, is dedicated to continued learning and finding new ways of doing something that his dad and grandparents before him have all been doing. So I hope you enjoy this. I started out asking Clint about how he got into building in the first place. Clint, thank you for your time. Let's start out with Wanaka, where you are now. For those that haven't had the pleasure of being there, how do you describe Wanaka?
I suppose when I first got here, it was a bit of a retirement village, and it's a very seasonal town. Like busy during the winter and busy around Christmas, but the off seasons were very, very quiet. But the industry's really taken off. People's I suppose, desire to come here from all sorts of different reasons, the outdoors, the sports, the environment. It's got a huge appeal internationally, and there's no such thing as a quiet season anymore anyways.
Well, and it is a stunning location. Just amazing scenery on the lake there. You got the mountains. You've had a pretty amazing ski season.
Yeah, it has. It's been fantastic ski season, and really busy. So surprisingly busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had the
Now, and you're just so we're into spring now. So starting to get some warmer days, but you were just saying that it got down to about 3 degrees just yesterday morning. Is that rare for this time of year?
No, not really. We sort of, have a rule where we don't plant our veggie garden until after Labour weekend because you typically get a few late frosts through and they'll just sap all your veggies. So
yeah,
got some veggies inside at the moment that are itching to get outside, but we'll wait until after Labour weekend. Yeah.
Well, that's good timing. But you're sitting there in shorts and t-shirt at the moment. Why is that?
Because I'm in my show home in Wanaka in Alpine Estate. Yeah. So
and is that a passive house?
It's not certified passive house, but I suppose we apply as much as we can to fit the budgets of our builds. We're always pushing towards that. We're triple glazed. We've got the Max Raft slab using the performance SIP panels on the walls and roof, and I have my own factory where we pre-assemble the panels, so I can actually get a very airtight product, and so that airtightness goes a long way to making everything else perform as it should.
So that's sounds like it's a bit your kind of recipe now, using the fully insulated slab with Max Raft. For a lot of your homes, you've settled on SIP panels and trying to upspec the glazing. When you say you've got your own factory, so is that the SIP panels that you're putting together, or are you adding how does that work?
Yeah, so the foremen still supply us with the panels individually, cut to their shop drawings, and then we pre-assemble all the walls in the factory. And I suppose the beauty of that is we do it indoors in a controlled environment, and we don't have any external environmental conditions like when you try and assemble them on site, the wind's blowing the foam everywhere, so on and so forth. You can end up with compromised joints. They're not as good as they should be. Whereas in our factory, every joint is absolutely airtight for sure. And I've got a customised bench that goes together on, so everything's extremely flat, square, straight. So when it goes together on site, it goes together very, very quickly. And we do all our racks as well in the factory.
Right. Okay, so you do that and seal up the joints. What sort of sizes? Size do the components come to you in, and what's the maximum size that you can take out of the factory?
Generally, they're a 12, 20 wide panel, and we can get up to 4.5 meters for a panel height out the door. But in saying that, the biggest panel we made was a roof panel at 3,660 by 9.2 meters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we basically load them up in sequence onto. I've got these trolleys that wheel out and they go on the back of the truck, and they come straight off the truck into where they go.
What's your radius at the moment? Like how far from your factory would you do that sort of construction?
We've done one over in Hannah's Clearing, south of Haast, which is on the other side of the Haast Pass. And further south down into just a bit further east of Alexandria into Galloway.
Right.
Done one out there. But we try and stick closer to our local area because there's enough work here. Projects that to drag us out of our area are more for people that are friends, close to the family, more love jobs, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a reasonable distance, but it's also a pretty challenging road up and over that Haas Pass. You want to make sure that everything's well planned doing that trip.
Yeah, the logistics of that project was quite challenging. Obviously, you're batching your concrete in Wanaka and then sending trucks over the pass. So you've got
right.
Everything you do over there is a challenge. So
Well, and I guess as much as you can prefabricate, the better, because you're bringing your elements almost as near complete as you can, and reducing the risk of having to come back and get something.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about. We talk before we get onto Passive House. Have you always been a builder?
Yes, I have. Actually, construction in my family is quite strong. I've still got three uncles two now, sorry. One's just recently passed. Two uncles that are builders. My father is a builder. He's still on the tools. He's 77.
Awesome.
And then on my dad's side, it goes back to my grandfather, who was also a builder. And on my mum's side, it actually goes back 7 generations. So,
wow.
Yeah, so it's sort of in the blood.
Well, and you've got you're keeping it in the family. You got Jack on the tools as well.
Yeah. My son's been
nice.
out. Yeah.
When was the first time? Do you remember the first time you heard about Passive House?
Yeah, it was probably be pushing 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've actually, on a friend of mine's place over in West Coast there, about 18 years ago, we built a little hunting hut. It's got no power in it. It's got a flush toilet outside and stuff like that. But we built that, and that's actually got a slip panel roof on it. And we did that about 18 years ago. And that's just the greatest little hut to stay in, It's easy to heat and just works perfectly. So, it was always something that I wanted to get into. It's just getting into it back then was a hard thing to do.
And you're not short of examples in your part of the world. You've got Jonathan Holmes in Hawea Flat with the first Passive House Plus in New Zealand. Pretty amazing example. And you've got some other key players in Passive House Institute around Queenstown, Wanaka. Are those people, have they influenced your journey, or were you kind of always intending to go down that way anyway?
No, I was sort of well on my way before I even heard about Jonathan Holmes.
Yeah,
and I mean, Emma, my partner, she was working in the office for Anne Salmond.
Right.
And, so, 12, 14 years ago, we sort of priced a few jobs for Anne, but, they just never got across the line as such. And then I suppose at that same time, like I've been building since I was 16 years old, and I'm 49 now. So I sort of did get to a point in my career where I was getting a bit tired with how the industry functions, and I was losing job satisfaction working on multi-million dollar jobs and walking away going, that house is just not performing how it should. So
yeah, right.
we also, at that point in time, were struggling with the process, which was, typically client goes to designer, house gets designed, and then it goes out to tender, and then builders start competing for the job. And we were actually experiencing sitting down and submitting prices to clients and, seeing them break down in tears because it was hundreds of thousands of dollars over their budget. And I just thought, well, this just doesn't work. And we were hearing the same feedback from a lot of our clients. So we made a decision that we needed to be involved in that concept and design process so we could make sure that things were getting designed on budget and getting the right systems involved. And it was just no looking back once we made that decision. We knew it was the right decision to make. And, to be fair, the first 3 years were hard because there wasn't many areas you could turn to in the industry 10, 12 years ago to get the information or support you were after. So we had to make sure we turned to engineers to sign off and check off on things. And we discovered that there was a lot of stuff that was out there happening that wasn't right. So we set about making sure we put it right.
How did you actually do that? Like, how did you incorporate the design process or become involved in that? I mean, you don't have an architect in your team, so what did that look like in reality?
It was more about putting ourselves out there and finding the people who are looking to build. And getting in touch with them before they'd settled on an actual consented design, and then having the conversation about building smarter and building, I suppose, a relationship based on trust that, we knew what we were talking about and that they were going to get a much, much better home if they followed our advice. And we have not had an unhappy client since.
And were you also do you also talk directly to the designer?
Oh, definitely. So we work very closely with our designer. That's, a very important relationship. And initially, we were working with a guy who was much younger, and he was great to work with, but then he sort of moved away, and then we ended up meeting up with Adrian from Cadence, and we've been working with Adrian, and it's actually a really refreshing and good relationship to have with a guy like him, because we can sit down. There's no ego. There's no issues. It's just very, very much about the job and making sure we get things done right and properly. And so the discussions are always about, how can we move forward with what we're doing. And so the beauty of it is that we have jobs in design, and whilst we're actually building something, we can, go through. I mean, I'm sure every architect in the country's heard the grizzles from builders about why we're doing it this way. And, that sort of thing I experienced earlier in my career. And I just thought, why are these relationships so fractured? Why is this tug of war still going on, And I suppose through experiencing that, I was like, well, there's no need for this. Let's just sit down and go, right, this isn't working. I propose this is a good way of doing it. The detail gets changed in our office on the current jobs that are going through planning. The next job comes up. We've gone from, that level, we've stepped up to another level And my team are just like, this is so much easier, it's so much better, it's more efficient, it works better. And as soon as we established that process, we've just continued to do that job after job after job and refine our product. And it's just really refreshing process, and it's a real rewarding process.
Yeah. So is that exclusive now? Do you only work with the one designer?
Yeah, pretty much. We've got a designer and an engineer that we work with. We're happy with how things go. I suppose with the volume of work we're putting through, Adrian's always been able to service what we're doing. We haven't really, I suppose, had the need to look elsewhere since, and it's working. So it's the old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type scenario.
Yeah. How did you find doing the Passive House Tradesperson course?
To be honest, I was a bit nervous going into it. I've always been a bit modest about my capabilities, I suppose. So, but once I got my teeth into it, I realised how much I actually knew and how long I'd been doing it for, and I just flew through it. And I found it much easier than I thought I would, to be honest. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic.
Because you had already been using SIPS panels, and you're sort of aware of air tightness. Had you been doing ventilation and everything else already?
Yeah, so we've been doing that for 10 years now. I haven't built a stick frame home in 10 years. So
right, yeah.
Once I transitioned into this type of construction, I'm the sort of character that once I do something, that's it. I don't sort of bounce between things. I'm a bit of a go-getter in that respect. So, yeah, I was just like, right, this is what we're doing. This. To me, it's I know there's a lot of different ways out there of creating an airtight envelope and a high-performing envelope. But as a builder, when you try different techniques, there's always one that's easier. And if you're looking at your performance and you're going, right, how can we do this and get the result without throwing heaps of labour to it? The SIPS panels are just so easy to work with. They really are.
And speaking of results, you've had some pretty good ones. How are your? Are you trying to get your air tightness down, or is that just kind of a product of the design and the style of house?
No, we've been focusing on air tightness. We're focusing on quite a few things, but the air tightness has been a process of, I suppose, I started off with looking at following the standard, performance specification as far as applying the glues and foams and putting the panels together. And I just felt there was weaknesses within that specified system and we could do better. So we didn't really want to question the work they'd done. We just thought, okay, we'll make some internal changes and see if we get better results. And we did. So then we made more changes and we got better results again. And so we've continued to do that. And we've continued to get better results. And I suppose that process of us being involved from the concept right through design process, we're actually able to do a real honest and open audit with ourselves as builders and designers and our engineering, and we can actually evolve from one job to the next. So it's really put us in a strong position to actually identify where we can get gains and how we can get them. And realistically speaking, we've got plenty of scope to do way better than we're doing. Our main restraint now is just budgets.
Right. Emma tells me your last couple of results, you had 0.18 and a 0.16 air changes per hour. That's getting pretty tight. What were the main contributing factors getting down to that level?
Process, just understanding the process and where to apply the right attendance and make sure that things are getting done to their full extent.
Were there some key places where you were finding leaks before, or any significant spots?
I'm very hands-on, so I attend my staff, and so as things are going together, I could see where I suppose things would get missed.
Yeah.
Like potentially, say for example, you've got your exterior walls up and there'd be an internal frame coming up and there might be a panel join there, and they might tape the join but not down at the bottom plate a little bit, or something might get missed somewhere, just little things. So I would actually go through and go, right, that's not good enough, and we'd try and make some sort of remedial attempt at the end process initially, and going, okay, we've got to make good there. And so it come down to me making sure I put my attendance into where things were going together and how they're going together at the right time, so that you've got everything getting done 100%.
Because I mean those types of joins would be pretty hard to identify and fix later in the process when the lining's up and you can't get to that spot.
Oh yeah, there's no fixing it. Yeah, so it's really as you're going through each milestone, if you like, of work, it's just making sure that you're ticking that box before you move on to the next stage. And that's really where I believe we've got it to a point where, bear in mind those air tightness scores that we're talking about with aluminium joinery, we still haven't, got into doing stuff with your European tilt and turn or anything like that, which much better result again, both thermally and with our air tightness,
Yeah. You're obviously sold on the idea of air tightness. Do you have trouble convincing your clients that it's a good idea?
Not at all, really. I sort of, when we talk with our clients, I take the approach that to do a good job, you've got to have those relationships. Have got to be working. And if you sit down and your client's got preconceived ideas and you're finding it hard to get them across the line, I will generally say to them, look, I'm actually not the guy for your project, and try and steer them somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And I'd rather then pick the next person up that's actually come to us, because, at the end of the day, after 34 years, I like to conduct myself as a professional. And if I need to go into a surgery and see a surgeon and get an operation done, I'm not going to start telling him how to operate on me.
Yeah.
I'm going to rely on him being the professional, And likewise, when a designer and myself are putting a project together, we'll definitely take on board the client's wants and needs in regards to their concept. But if they really want a high-performing home, as you well know, there's certain things you can't compromise. And so if you do want to make compromises, you've certainly got to make up for it somewhere else. So those are the discussions that are had. And when you're sitting down at a table with someone and you can see the conversation's working and it's going in the right direction, then, we're happy to work with those types of people. So, and what we've found, especially over the last 5 years, is that there's been a huge shift in the general public and their knowledge and understanding of what constitutes a good home. And so it's actually got a lot easier for us to make those conversions.
Nice. Well, where to from here, Clint? What's you've got your show home now, which is one of the, I think, the still pretty early days for those high performance show homes. So it's great to have that for people to come and see. But what are the plans for the next 5 years?
We've got some really exciting projects coming up, which I'm extremely excited about because it opens opportunities for us to do better, and the clients are very, very well aligned with what we want to do, which is good. And I know that sounds funny, but part of the conversation I have with our clients is, as much as it's their project and it's their home, one thing I do say is that, you know, my career is also about me. And so I don't really have any interest in taking on projects that are going to take me sideways or backwards. The projects I want to get involved with, I've got aspirations. So the next 5 years for me have got to be forwards and upwards and better. And so we've got some projects that are going to facilitate that for us. We've got also a potential exciting opportunity to do another show home, which at the moment there's talks of that being the highest performing home in Wanaka. But
nice,
you know, talk's cheap. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. You mentioned before that you were starting to get a bit disheartened building multi-million-dollar houses and not being sure about the performance of them. How do you feel about your work now?
Emma and I feel quite proud of what we've achieved. You know, like if I look back, it'll probably be close to 10 years ago where Nick Hubbard from Performance was standing in my dining room, standing over the table with his camera, taking photos of some of my details that I pioneered, which are now in his on-site guide. You know, that's a credit to, I suppose, what we do. And that was 10 years ago, and that sort of thing hasn't stopped. We've refined a huge amount of details on high performance houses that I'm seeing coming out everywhere now,
awesome,
which is cool. I'd like to try and see, I've been making some noises in behind the scenes for quite some time. You'll probably note that, you know, our government makes a bit of noise about making the industry better, increasing our standards and you know, therefore by default allowing us to build better homes. I feel that has been a disappointment for me throughout my career, to actually feel like you're constantly waiting for that to happen, and it just seems to happen at such a slow rate. And I feel I've identified a, I suppose, what I would call a major weakness in what they're saying, that leads me to believe that not a lot's going to happen, and I could well be retired and dead, and we still won't be seeing a lot of change. And that's got to do with if you do something on a personal level, if your intent right now at having something for yourself in 15 years' time, you quite simply need to look at what you're doing now and ask yourself, am I doing even something minute towards getting there now? Yes or no? Because if you're not going to get there, right? So there has to be something happening at a minor level. And to me, when I look at our apprentices coming through and our unit standards and the training, I feel that we need to be doing much, much better there. So all the apprentices I've put through probably getting close to 8 apprentices now that have done nothing but high performance housing. And every single one of them, when they go do their block courses, there's nothing there for them. Nothing.
Yeah,
so,
right. Yeah.
If you consider that the current apprentice I've got, she feels on a daily basis working in this situation like, wow, there's so much to learn. It can be almost overwhelming when you're just fresh to it. Then she goes down, does her first week's block course and comes home absolutely fizzing because she's just spent the week educating her peers and her tutor, And it's like,
yeah.
Why is that happening?
Yeah.
Why is there not at least one unit standard or even 1 hour or even a 20-minute session talking about what constitutes a better home, what makes a better home, what are other ways of building better homes? Why not table some of these ideas and at least plant the seed in our juniors so as they're coming through into the industry, they're aware that there is other options.
Yeah.
Like at the moment, all our apprentices across the country, they're getting trained without them running into someone like yourself or myself or the others that are out there trying to make a difference. They simply won't be aware. So they're just getting pushed into the industry and they're going to keep doing what everyone else has been doing before them. Yeah. So to me, that's something that needs to be fixed. We need to make some noise, and we need to get something into our apprentices that light a spark, plant the seed, and get them looking at this type of construction, because without that, you won't see the change that you need to see.
Yeah.
And if you think about
Very
it,
good.
If you did that with apprentices and with design, right? And if you did that tomorrow, in 10 years' time, you'd see the change, because those people would be now out there doing it. It's the easiest way to change our industry, I feel.
Not going to happen overnight, but like I say, it does. Something does need to change, and at that early stage, probably. Certainly, having people like yourself out there and show homes and more houses out there where people can experience what it does feel like to be in a well performing home helps change things. But yeah, I agree that more emphasis on the training side is a big opportunity to change things a bit faster.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Clint, for your work and also for your time today. I really appreciate it. Where can people find out more about CBG?
We've got a website, so www.CBG Construction, and our show home is in Alpine Estate in Wanaka. So if you go into Alpine Estate and turn into Dean's Drive, you'll see the show home right on the corner there.
Nice.
Yeah. So
good reason to visit Wanaka.
Definitely.
Awesome. Hey, well, thank you very much for your time, Clint. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the coming spring. Hope those plants get outside. Yep. And we'll look forward to catching up in person sometime soon.
Yeah, no, I'd enjoy that. Thank you very much.
And that was Clint Gollop, who's the Managing Director of CBG Quality Construction. What do you think, Zach?
Well, fantastic. Thanks for sharing this interview. 7 generations of building is kind of amazing. And at that seventh generation, we have Clint looking at practice and asking questions about, why aren't these buildings performing better, and becoming a real innovator in this space. So that was really cool to hear about.
Yeah. So a couple of things stand out from where Clint has settled on his preferred construction method now. He's tended towards structural insulated panels, so SIP panel construction, which I imagine could be a bit of a challenge for someone who's learnt the craft of building, because a big part of being a carpenter is having a pile of sticks turning up on a building site, and then converting that into a house, or having frames and then standing those up and forming a house. And SIP construction is quite different from that. I mean, obviously there's still really important parts of laying out the slab, making sure it's all going to be straight and the panels are going to fit on there, but you really become more of an assembler of larger components rather than putting things together. There's certainly still a lot of really important attention to detail around the joints, around installing all the windows and the framing, and then the finishing of the internal environment. But I think that's really commendable, to have something that's been in your family for generations and generations, but to then say, what do we need to do to continue to learn and to change the way we're doing things to do it better? So, I don't want to underestimate or understate how significant I think that is of Clint to step out of the way things have always been done. The second thing that stands out, if you have a look at any of the images on his site, is that he tends to leave the interior exposed as the interior surface of the SIP panel, or to leave it as timber. So to basically not use plasterboard. Most of our homes are finished with plasterboard on the inside, which caused a problem this year when there was a big shortage of supply. But it was also quite a big component of embodied carbon, which we were talking about at the top of the show. So not having that material, it's a different look. You end up with a more wood cabin, or definitely a very high timber look on the inside if you don't paint it. But it's there's definitely some efficiencies to be gained from that different way of doing things.
It's interesting that he's bringing this sort of high performance, almost high tech kind of approach to building, but the actual experience inside these buildings is very connected to wood and natural materials because of that. And you were talking about the change in his practice, and I mean, I think you mentioned at some point in the interview that it's been years since he's done a stick built house, and the one of the themes that came through loud and clear to me was his commitment to incremental improvement. I think he mentioned that a couple of times, and the way that assembling these panels together into walls in the controlled environment of his factory allows him to dial in those incremental improvements and figure out how to each building becomes less of a standalone prototype, which is what which is what I think can be so challenging in the construction industry. That can, I think, make it harder for us to experience the kinds of learning curves and experience curves that that other realms of the clean energy transition get to benefit from. But I think that what he is finding is a way to benefit from that kind of that learning and the little micro innovations that he's making probably along the way to do better and better buildings. And I think another thing that was really interesting was that initial motivation around basically to help clients actually realize their dreams. I mean, I think that he mentioned clients being in tears because they couldn't afford the projects. I've recently gone through a similar process. I don't know that I shed any tears, but it was certainly super frustrating to get to a place where realizing that the labor was just going to be too expensive.
Yeah.
And so he's figuring out like, how do we not throw a bunch of labor at these solutions? What's the best way to do it? And it's
and part of that is also reframing what people want, because sometimes you can meet that budget by reducing the size of the house if you actually talk through, do you really need all that size, and what about the quality? How do you want to feel in the house? And that's something that, by tending towards a passive house result and performance, you're going to end up with people who probably get more what they actually need and probably would value, but may struggle to verbalize that or visualize it in the outset, because they're so bombarded by, certainly in our market, you've got to have a big house, a 2-car garage and all this other stuff. And that pushes up the cost. So sometimes it's a matter of just reframing, is what actually do you need, but also what do you want to get out of your home? How do you want to feel inside it?
Yeah. And we've spoken with other practitioners who are also at this place in their practice, or have decided to make this leap where he's okay with saying, well, maybe I'm not the right guy for your project. If he's speaking to a client who isn't down with that, and, recognizing that there are some compromises, there are some areas you just can't compromise on if you want to actually create a high performance home. Yeah. He also, I was heartened to hear that there's this greater awareness in his mind, he feels like there's a greater awareness among the general public in terms of their understanding of well-functioning homes. And that was kind of juxtaposed against this observation that apprentices aren't learning about high performance building. So you've got this kind of disjuncture of like the marketplace seems to be coming along a little bit, but there's still this lag in the training system for people who are going to be building these buildings. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's quite a big topic, but I think essentially a lot of our training is geared towards pumping out people who are qualified enough to slot in to build to the existing building code.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas, because there's this huge demand for just volume at the moment, and just number of houses to be built and to get them fast and deliver them fast and as cost effectively as possible. So there just isn't any space or motivation, I think, to add things beyond that. And a lot of builders just say, well, why would you do air tightness? Why would you go to high performance windows if you don't have to? Because it's not part of the building code. But like you say, it is heartening that there's a portion of the market that do get that and are wanting more of it. And there are younger people, and I think it's great that there are people like Clint that young people can attach them to, apprentices can attach them to as well, that will give them that learning on the job.
Yeah, good point. And we should reference the last week's episode with Mariana Pickering of Emu Systems, who or Emu Passive at least in the U.S. and I know that there are builder training. There's builder training going on in New Zealand and Australia too, but there are some great resources for folks who are tackling this very problem.
Yeah, well, certainly anyone here. We have the Passive House Academy, which is part of the Passive House Institute here, which run the certified Passive House Tradesperson course, which I haven't heard anyone not be super grateful of having. It's a bit. It feels like a big commitment because it's it's a 4 or 5 days off the tools and training, but people get so much out of it.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's even by essence, it's more practical than the certified designer course, but it's a really great hands-on course. It is full on. There's a lot of science in there as well, but really, really valuable. And the Australian Passive House Association also run those courses either directly or through other entities, but they have all the information listed on the Australian Passive House website. So get your builders to get into it.
Yeah, well, I think we need to provide some links in the show notes for folks. So
we certainly will do that.
Yeah.
Awesome. We've got some great stuff coming up.
We do. So we're in the midst of rolling out a bunch of bonus episodes of the podcast, the Passive House podcast at FIASCon 2022. So these are interviews that you, Mathew, and Mary James conducted in Chicago just a week and a half ago. And so I think by the time this podcast regular episode publishes, we'll have special episodes featuring Tessa Bradley of Artisans Group, Sloan Ritchie of Cascade Built, Sam McAfee of Zola Windows, and I think we'll probably have another one published by then. So check those out. They're shorter format and really fun kind of snippets of the sorts of thought leadership that we were encountering at FIASCon. We also want to just give another shout out to the Passive House Accelerator magazine, the brand new issue that we released 2 weeks ago. It's called Resilience, Restoration, and Rebuilding. It's a great resource, published by Mary James. Jay Fox was instrumental in making it happen, and all sorts of other folks. So that's available for download on our website. This week is packed for the Passive House Accelerator. So Tuesday, my time, so Wednesday, your time, Mathew, we have a Passive House component spotlight featuring Flores from 475. And Flores will be introducing the Flare 325/400 from Brink, which is the highest efficiency PHI certified HRV system available in North America. And then on Wednesday, my time, so Thursday, your time, at Passive House Accelerator Live, we are going to be joined by John Wolfling of Datner Architects. John was one of the keynote speakers at FIASCon, and he was the designer for the 425 Grand Concourse project. He's going to be speaking about affordable multifamily passive house, a denser path to clean. So the connection between urban design and building form, passive house, and how that can move us toward decarbonization, specifically around affordable housing. Then on Thursday, my time, Friday in New Zealand and in Australia, we're going to have episode 2 of our Urban Passive House series that we are co-producing with New York Passive House. So this episode will feature Sarah Bayer of MAP, and she will be presenting about the new Passive House construction project called Cooper Park Commons. So that'll be on November 17th in North America in noon Eastern. And I think that covers it for our side. No, it's a lot. Sorry, everybody. We'll have links to all this, and there's other stuff going on in the community that we'll provide a link to as well. So there's no shortage of material to dig your teeth into.
Check it all out on the Passive House Accelerator website, and be sure to sign up to the newsletter there so that you'll get all those dates and more in your inbox as well, so that you don't miss all of the great events that are going on.
Indeed.
Awesome. All right, that's a wrap for this week. We'll be back again on the Passive House podcast next week, so we'll talk to you then.